Extreme editions are Asus opportunity to show off their engineering skills without any concern for pricing. They're trying to push the boundaries a little further, and that's why, as a reviewer, it's always such a treat to review a motherboard like this. Today we're reviewing the ROG Maximus XI Extreme Edition, and since there have been no Maximus Extreme edition for 2 full chipset cycle or 2 full years, expectations are particularly high. The last time we had an Extreme edition for Maximus series was with the Maximus IX Extreme edition, which I had reviewed back in June 2017, and which you should check if you haven't done so. And you actually saw me playing around with it. I made a build, an upgrade with it, so if you've watched my channel, you are well familiarized with it. But it did come with a wider monoblock. I mean, that is a point of Extreme editions with Asus. It usually comes with a very high price tag, and actually probably the highest price tag a motherboard can fetch on the market for that time, and with an incredible amount of feature. And the problem with the Maximus 9 and why there was no Maximus 10 Extreme is because it did come with such niche and expensive features. It was dedicated for custom water cooling builders, and it did kind of flop. Asus did not sell so many of those, and they did cost about $750 before taxes when you could find it. But this time Asus wanted to release something a little bit more balanced and accessible to all, and avoid this little custom water cooling niche trap the Maximus 9 Extreme fell into. But enough said, let's dig right in. The Maximus XI Extreme Edition has an E80X form factor, meaning 30.5 cm long for 27.7 cm wide. Therefore, you want to pick the right case for this extended ATX motherboard. It features a rather large thermo-padded shield on its back for better cooling and circuit protection. It is powered by an LGA 1151 CPU socket, which can support both the 8th and 9th generation of Intel iCore processors. VRM-wise, we have a 12 faces configuration, 10 of which are dedicated to power our CPU alone, and that makes the Maximus XI Extreme a particularly good overclocker, and especially when you're talking about high core counts, such as the 9900K, which has 8 physical core, or the i7, which are power hungry, and obviously the more faces you have, a better heat dissipation you get, and a safer and better power delivery you got. Again, the heatsinks are particularly imposing and thick, and they manage to stay below thermo throttling temps even with the i9 9900K running at 5.1 GHz for about a 6-hour CPU stress test, and that is what Asus needed to get right in order to oppose particularly aggressive competition, especially coming from MSI in the overclocking market segment. RAM-wise, we have our usual dual channel configuration, which can support up to 64 GB of DDR4 RAM, overclockable up to 4.4 GHz. But here you want to be careful, because Asus has just released a BIOS update for the Maximus XI Euro Edition, which allowed it to support up to 128 GB of DDR4 RAM, and it would not surprise me if they would do the very same BIOS update for other motherboards, including the Maximus XI Extreme. Storage-wise, our board can support up to 4 M.2 solid-state drives, 2 under our chipset heatsink, and 2 on our DIMM M.2 slot. Since our Z390 chipset is of course Optane ready, all of our M.2 solid-state drives can swap data up to 32 gigabit per second individually. And that of course means higher temps and certain thermo throttling. That is why all of our M.2 solid-state drives have thermo-padded heat shields. And yes, even our DIMM.2 card does, which by the way does look great. Moving along, we have 4 3rd generation PCIe Expresses, 1 single slot, single speed, and 3 16 slots with different speeds. Only the first can deliver up to 16 bus speed, therefore this is where you want your video card to be for optimal performances. In a dual GPU configuration, the 2 first PCIe will be sharing their bandwidth and deliver each 8 bus speed respectively. The last 16-slot PCIe Express has been capped up to 4 bus speed, pretty much useless for a third video card. I would not even try to put one there. Since the two first PCIe Expresses are the ones meant to carry the heavy weight of our video cards, they have been metallically reinforced. SATA-wise, we have 6 third-generation SATA plugs which can all transfer data up to 6 gigabit per second and which can be configured to operate in a RAID 0, 1, 5 or 10. I/O-wise, first let me note the presence of an integrated I/O shield, which is always a great idea. Starting from the left, we have a BIOS and clear CMOS button, an HDMI 1.4 video output, 6 3.1 first generation USB plugs which can transfer data up to 5 gigabit per second, 4 3.1 second generation USB plugs including a Type-C which can all transfer data up to 10 gigabit per second. We also have 2 LAN plugs, a 5 gigabit Aquentia plug as well as a 1 gigabit LAN. Next to it we have a 802.11 AC dual band Wi-Fi with a 2x2 Mumimu standard which can transfer data up to about 1.7 gigabit per second and in addition a 5th generation Bluetooth adapter. Finally, we have a 7.1 channel S1220 Supreme FX audio adapter. Not the absence of the color plastic ring which usually are around our audio plugs. Instead, they have been backlit with their respective color codes. So far, so good, and even though it looks like a well-featured and luxurious board, nothing really out of the norm. That is until now, because Extreme Editions are usually trying to be extreme in the way they can support the most extreme custom water cooling systems. Starting with 12 nested fan connectors, 4 of which are PWM. 2 10 watts water pump connector, also either DC or PWM. If that was not enough, we can also add a provided fan extension card, which will add up to 4 fans and 3 thermal sensors. So potentially, I don't know what kind of custom water cooling system you'd go with, but you would be able to run 16 fans, up to 16 fans on the same motherboard without any kind of splitters. Take that environment. We have a water flow sensor, a in and out water sensor, 3 thermal sensors connectors, and finally a water block connector hidden right under our top heatsink, just in the case you'd want to go completely cuckoo and install a water monoblock, just as in the Maximus IX Extreme. No, We also have 2 480 megabit per second second generation USB plugs, 2 5 gigabit 3.1 USB plugs, and finally a 10 gigabit USB 3.1 second generation Type-C front panel connector. And of course, this would not be an Extreme motherboard if it did not have an old connection of troubleshooting features, gizmos in there. First, we have a QLED screen, which, let's face it, is very handy to identify where and what kind of problem you're facing in case of boot failure. We also have an easy debugger right next to it, which is cool and good, but also super tiny. I mean, I've never seen such a tiny one. I get it. ASUS engineering team tried to really cram it, and that's kind of a must-have because it's already there on the Strix series and cheaper motherboards. But my god, it's so tiny! Unsurprisingly, we also have a live dash which will display our CPU frequency, voltage or temperatures, or just give us some nonsense. It's really up to you to decide. Finally, we have a bunch of salt dog buttons, which is always a great idea, including a start, reset, save boot and retry button. I know I keep saying finally, but finally, this would not be an Asus or Republic of Gamer motherboard if it did not come with a bunch of RGB options. First, we have 3 Aura compliant RGB strips nested right onto our board. 1 right under the I/O roofing, 1 right under our chipset heat shield, and finally 1 sandwiched between our PCB and our PCB heat shield. And of course, if that was not enough, and say you'd want to add some RGB strips connector to this, well, we have 2 Aura RGB compliant connectors, as well as 2 addressable Aura RGB connectors. And who knows, maybe you will be able to run a full tanning spa salon out of your build. In conclusion, the ROG Maximus XI Extreme will run you anywhere between $600 to $650 before taxes, which makes it for the Z390 chipset particularly probably the most expensive motherboard out there. I need to double check this. And compared to the Maximus 9 Extreme, which did come with its own water monoblock or M.2 solid-state drive water monoblock, it feels somewhat of a Blender, more normal board. But Blender, in this case, I think is also better. I told you earlier, Asus is trying to be more accessible to all kinds of enthusiasts out there. And what's really nice about this particular motherboard is the fact that usually manufacturers tries to balance feature and budget, but not here. Here budget took the backseat and engineers were given carte blanche in terms of everything. And that gives us a Maximus XI Extreme. If this is your first build, if this is your first computer and you're running anything below an i7, this is not for you, obviously. I'd go on a Prime or a Strix, both of which I reviewed and you should definitely take a look at. But if you are a hardcore enthusiast, which is looking for, I don't know, overclocking an i7 or i9 9900K, custom water cooling, single or dual loop, and having some really advanced features, this is where your money needs to be. This is the very essence of a perfect motherboard. It's absolutely premium manufacture. There is an absolute sense of robustness to it. The features are second to none. And when you're paying $600, this is what you should expect, nothing less. And I have absolutely nothing to criticize. I know it's an expensive motherboard, but I'm getting the money I'm paying for. There's nothing like this on the market, in my opinion. And that's why I'm giving the ROG Maximus XI Extreme Edition the Laurent's Choice Z390 Award, which, yes, indeed, is a thing.